Hey there, welcome to Main Street Living. I'm Cheryl Nelson.
I'm Danielle Amari.
Hey, I'm Quincy Carr.
How are you?
Right, it's like right there. Oh, everything is going fine, Cheryl. How about you?
I'm doing well. You know, one thing I really miss, though, I don't know about you guys, is traveling. I used to travel all of the time, and my heart goes out for all of everybody impacted by this. I mean, you're talking hotels, restaurants, airlines, the travel tourism industry in general, right?
Yeah, anything outside my bedroom is traveling now. So
yeah. I know it's so true because a lot of us are stuck at home, and that's why we're bringing you this broadcast from home. But I found this study by Wallet Hub, and it's pretty interesting. They looked at the states in the U.S. that were most impacted from loss of tourism. And so we have a list of the top 10 states that were impacted. Anybody guess what number one is?
California. It's not California.
That's a good guess. And they actually made the top 10, but number one is Hawaii, believe it or not. So I can see that. A lot of people go to Hawaii this time of the year. And number two, though, was Montana, which I found interesting. But they have some big ski resorts up there. And usually ski well into spring. Look at Quincy. He's like,
no, because I see the look on Danielle's face. It's like, what's in Montana?
I used to live in Wyoming, okay? So big sky, I get it. Sure.
Yeah, it's a really pretty area. And then rounding out the top five were Nevada with Vegas, makes sense, Vermont and Massachusetts. And then finishing out the top 10, Florida, New Hampshire, DC, New York, and California. So I can see a lot of these other states being on the list.
Yeah. And Danielle, you live there in LA. So, I mean, are you noticing like it's not that many people like out and about like they used to?
Oh yeah, I mean the freeways I've never seen the freeways like this. It's completely there's no traffic pretty much any time of the day. It's kind of surreal, but also it seems like the air quality is so much better, which is just like you didn't think you would see in LA ever.
So. Isn't that interesting? Because it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day this year. And so I know that climate scientists are really excited about that. You know, you see the satellite images of the air pollution, and it's so much better, just like you said, because a lot of us are staying home. And so I wonder if that's going to lead to, after this is over, many people still working from home. What do you guys think?
I'd like to continue to do it. I mean, it's, everything up here is dressed up. Everything down there is regular.
I mean, what? Yeah.
Okay, I have pajamas on. Okay, stop it. Okay.
Regular.
I'm not sure what you were alluding to there, Quincy. Family show.
I mean, I like the ability to do this, but I think employers will probably say, hey, we had to do it when we were forced. Now, this may be the norm,
Yeah, which is good and bad.
It's kind of nice to get out of the house, see other people. I know one of our producers is worried that I'm leaving the house. Yes, I've been leaving. I have to get food. There are things. I need things. Insanity. I've been going for runs. I would go outside a little bit. It's gotten considerably more challenging now that we're required pretty much to wear masks. So kind of like a Bane from Batman effect going on right now, but it's good. I think my cardiovascular's probably never been better. So.
Oh no! Well, there you go. We're getting some more exercise. We can't go to the gym, but we can run outside. And we've got some interesting stories coming up today on Main Street Living, guys. In fact, after the break, we're going to talk to an expert about people who are planning their weddings. And if you have anxiety about that, if you have a wedding coming up, she has some tips to make your planning go a little bit easier. So we'll talk to her coming up on Main Street.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. We are just getting started, and Danielle, you had Cheryl and I kind of not laughing at the situation, but like you had a funny story or a weird story for us.
Oh, I was just mentioning that we're talking about weddings, and my brother and his fiance actually had to postpone their wedding a whole year. So they're just getting this September. They're going September 2021.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's so tough. And I know that that's happening a lot. And people have anxiety about this. A lot of brides don't know what to do. And we have the perfect person to talk to about this. And we're going to bring in now London Carter. She's the CEO and founder of Lane London. And she's going to join us and give us some advice. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So how has the pandemic affected your business? Because I know you have a bridal boutique, and that obviously has changed things. And now you're lending a hand to help out some brides during this time.
Yeah, so we had to close our doors about 2 weeks into March. And so since then, we've really pivoted our purpose to just supporting and being there for brides as they're making these transitions and changes for their big day. We wanted to just really provide helpful information and resources. So as they're sitting at home, figuring out either if they're going to cancel indefinitely or if they're going to reschedule to another date, what they need to do and what are the steps that they need to take to make sure that both they're protected and also they're able to keep their sanity through all of this, because there's so much uncertainty going on right now.
Sanity is key. And I know you've heard of Bridezilla, and I hope there's not too many of them running around right now. But how do you know what to do? I mean, when do you decide, okay, do I call it? Do I postpone? Do I do a small ceremony?
Yeah, so the main thing that we tell brides is really just stay informed. So the CDC's website is a really great resource. They actually officially had recommended about a month ago now that all weddings be canceled in the United States for at least 8 weeks. And so what they have right now currently on their site is May 15th is kind of that cutoff date. So if your wedding is before that, they just recommend that you just cancel it. Even if you try and do something under 10 people, it's just, for the safety of your friends and family. We've seen so many reports of families that are being impacted by COVID-19. And so, we highly recommend, as well as, on the CDC's website, that just cancel it, stay at home with your fiance, and, your wedding will be bigger and better than ever. Or we also have brides that realize that a more small, intimate wedding is more down their alley.
Could you imagine, though, if you do a small intimate wedding and then you have your photos and everybody's wearing a mask in the picture? I mean, that would be a story to tell to kids way down the road. But what tips do you have for managing anxiety and not turning into a Bridezilla right now? Because there's a lot of moving parts with this, the flowers, the photographer, the venue, the cake. I could go on and on.
Absolutely. So one of the main things that we tell brides is just breathe. That's super important. Your mental health as well as your physical health. You want to make sure that you're in a right mental state, especially as you're figuring out, planning for additional costs. You're figuring out, you're speaking with your different vendors, and also just being empathetic that also the vendors that you're using are small businesses and they're going through some of the similar things that you are. So I tell brides, one of the main things is plan for additional costs. Be aware that some vendor fees change season over season. And so, you just want to make sure that, if your photographer is not available for the date that you're looking at in the future, be empathetic to them. And, if you're nice to them, maybe they can move things around or they can provide you another recommendation. At the end of the day, just remember you're marrying the love of your life. That's the most important part. And yeah, just breathe and know that it's okay to have these feelings and these thoughts. Something that we've specifically done for Georgia Brides is we created a Facebook support group. So it's called the COVID-19 support group for Georgia Brides. And, I definitely welcome people from all other states to join. First, check and see if your state has something similar, because there are some state-by-state CDC guidelines and regulations that may be pertinent specifically to your area. But if you can't find a group like that, you're more than welcome to join our Facebook group. It's really just a place for brides to be able to vent. I feel so bad for the fiancés that are sitting at home with them and they're kind of going through all this. And it's just a nice place for brides to talk with other brides and see how they're, combating this situation.
It's so hard. And I know it's hard for the families as well and the parents and everybody who's been looking forward to this. And, you think of the military as well, who plan weddings around deployment. So there's so much that goes into this. And thank you so much for having that support group as well. I'm sure it's helpful. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that was such a great interview. And I actually was talking with one of my friends who said that her son is getting married in April and they're actually keeping the wedding, but the parents aren't coming. They can't come. So it's just going to be better in the groom. I know.
It might be for the best.
Yeah. So much that goes into it.
Well, thank you guys so much for all of that information. I think she made a really good point. The important thing is that you found your person, you found your ride or die, you found your #1 overall draft pick. Coming up, we're talking about the NFL draft. Welcome back to Main Street Living. Sort of an uncertain time for a lot of us right now. Not really sure about a lot of different unknowns. And the NFL teams right now can definitely feel where we're coming from on that one. We have 32 teams ready to start making their selections in the NFL draft starting next Thursday. Here to talk to us today about it from VSiN, senior editor Matt Human. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be on with you. Yeah, you're right about that. It's definitely different here in Las Vegas right now. If you drive down the Strip, it's like small town America. There's nobody on the Strip. But there's nothing going on in the sports world really, except for this NFL draft next week, which there's going to be a lot of eyes on this draft.
Right. And we know that Commissioner Roger Goodell is going to be announcing him from his basement, which I'm sure will look bigger than most of our homes. But nevertheless, what can we expect from this virtual draft?
Well, you can expect a quarterback to go number one. Joe Burrow had an incredible season at LSU with 60 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. Best year a college quarterback's ever had. He's going to go number one. Will the Bengals trade that pick? Probably not. Then you got Chase Young, defensive end out of Ohio State, probably goes to the Redskins at number two. I really think the draft truly starts with the third pick, the Detroit Lions. They might move out of that spot. And then what happens with the quarterbacks? You're in Los Angeles with the Chargers, and there's a lot of pressure on that franchise to find a quarterback of the future. Is it Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama? He's got a lot of medical issues or questions right now, and these teams, because this is a virtual draft, have not had a chance to sit down with a lot of these prospects and conduct physicals. So he's kind of a mystery man in this draft in terms of he hasn't passed his physical with a lot of teams. What do the Chargers do at number 6? What do the Dolphins do at number 5? Where do those quarterbacks go in the top 10? Believe it or not, this draft has got so many proposition bets up on it. It's like a mini Super Bowl because it's the only thing going on in the sports world right now. So a lot of people will be glued to their TV sets watching the draft coverage next Thursday and hopefully watching VSiN when we do our live betcast. And, each pick is going to determine a bet.
Right.
And, there are going to be plenty of bets determined in the first round of the draft next Thursday night. And with sports betting legalized across America from Nevada to New Jersey and all points in between, people will be betting this draft legally. And there's going to be a lot of action on it, a lot of attention on this draft next Thursday night. And I'm looking forward to it because we haven't had much to look forward to recently. Let's be honest.
Absolutely. Not a lot to look forward to, but you guys do have a show coming up next Thursday as well. Live 4-hour show. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are going to be covering?
Yeah, we've done this for championship games. We do it for the NCAA Final Four, for the college national championship. We do it for big, NFL playoff games. Everything that matters in sports in terms of, a title game, we do a live betcast where live betting opportunities pop up during a game. We basically do the game in play-by-play commentating format, but from a sports betting perspective, when you talk about what you can bet during the game, how the bets are unfolding, as the action takes place. So that's what we'll do with our draft betcast on VSiN. We're going to talk about these picks as they happen next Thursday night in the first round. And like I said, each pick is basically going to determine a bet. So there's going to be a lot of interest in the draft, and we will do a 4-hour live show. Obviously, the NFL Network, ESPN, ABC have their broadcasts. Ours is going to be a little bit different because we were doing it from a sports betting perspective. So if you have action on this draft, you would want to watch us next Thursday night for our 4-hour show.
Right, and it'd be nice for us to all to have a little action, a little bored right now. With this virtual draft, are there any benefits to it? Is there anything we're going to see different? For example, maybe less trading going on?
I think that's a mystery because of the virtual draft format. Nobody really knows, and that's one of the most interesting aspects. We haven't done this before. Yeah, right. You can speculate. Maybe there'll be fewer trades because it's a little bit more difficult to communicate, or maybe that's not the way it turned out. I think there's going to be some trades. And once teams figure out, how to communicate and how to make this virtual draft format work smoothly, I think it should go off without a hitch, and it should feel like a normal draft, even though, like you said, it's from Roger Goodell's basement, not on the Las Vegas Strip. This was going to be one of the biggest spectacles in sports. There were going to be about 700,000 or 800,000 people on the Strip next week for the NFL draft, and instead it's going to be Roger Goodell in his basement.
Well, I think we've all wanted to see Roger Goodell's basement, so it's about time. It's good news. Thank you. We really appreciate all your insight. We hope to see you on your show next week on Thursday, Matt. We appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the show. Coming up, we are going to have
Welcome back to Main Street Living. You know, with so many precautions out there in place to minimize the community spread of COVID-19, it's kind of hard for people to get a gauge as to what will really help us prevent what will really prevent us from actually contracting it. So happy to have with us special guest, infectious disease specialist, Dr. Rebecca Cincinnati. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. Well, real quick, now, you're here to provide more of an understanding for a lot of people who know what this disease is. My question is, what exactly is COVID-19? Like, is it something that started in 2019, or did we just miss the 18 previous COVIDs?
So COVID-19, most likely started in 2019. That's when we believe that the virus changed over from infecting animals to being able to infect humans. And so it basically is a novel coronavirus, which means that it's never been seen in the human population before. And what happened was it was able to change from infecting only animals to having human-to-human transmission. And since we've never seen it before, our immune system has no immunity to it, and it's been able to spread across the globe.
That's very interesting, because I was looking at one of your YouTube videos, and you mentioned people are not percentages. Like, what exactly do you mean when you talk about that?
So that's in response to a lot of younger people are dying from this, unfortunately, even though we know overall the numbers show that younger people do better than older people. And the reason I say people aren't percentages is because even though we know that older people do worse, that doesn't mean that younger people can just ignore this and assume that they're going to be fine. Because yes, 99% of younger people will do great, but the younger people also may be hospitalized. They also may need a ventilator, and they also in some cases will unfortunately pass away. And so we need to look at this as a serious illness for everybody.
Great. Now, can you actually talk a little bit about how important social distancing is? Because some people are not adhering to it, and when it's warm outside, they're congregating. So just let our viewers know how important social distancing is.
So social distancing is the most important thing that we can do to prevent COVID-19 transmission. Mm-hmm. Social distancing works by breaking the cycle of transmission. So if you're not going out and being exposed to other people, you will not be exposed to COVID-19. Just like if you have COVID-19 and you don't go out, you will not expose other people to it. This is all we have right now. We do not have a vaccine. We do not have good treatment at this point for this infection. So by staying away from each other and not being exposed, it's the only thing we have. It's the only way we can get through this.
Well, it's interesting that you do say that, because when I have gone out, obviously, to get essentials, I wear a mask, but some people aren't. So should we all be wearing a mask?
Mm-hmm. So the new recommendation from the CDC that just came out is that everybody should be wearing cloth face covers when they go out to an area where they cannot maintain social distance. And so if you're going to the grocery store or you're going to a pharmacy and you're not going to be able to keep 6 feet away from people, then the recommendation is that you wear a cloth mask. And the purpose of this is not actually to keep you safe, it's to prevent you from infecting another person. And the reason is that we found that COVID-19, for about 48 hours before you develop symptoms, you can be spreading the virus. And it's spread by respiratory droplets. So when you're coughing, sneezing, and even talking, you can be spreading droplets that have infection in it. And so if you're going out without a mask, you could be leaving these wherever you go and infecting other people. And if you wear a cloth mask, you're going to protect your neighbor from that.
Absolutely. And real quick, where can people find more information about protecting themselves and helping with the minimizing the community spread of it?
So 2 great websites. So the CDC website has great information, and also the Riverside Online website has excellent information as well.
Awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate you, Dr. Rebecca, for joining us today, and also for providing us some great information and for letting our young viewers know that they are not invincible. Very important. So thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Awesome. And speaking of young people, when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about how to help young adults cope with anxiety. So you guys stay with us.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. We've covered a lot so far today, guys, but now we want to turn our attention to helping children.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you guys well know, we're spending a lot of time cooped up, a lot more time on social media, a lot of us away from people that we care about, and that can be kind of anxiety producing. So not only adults, right? Children, young adults are also affected by anxiety. Here to talk to us about that, we have educational consultant Kim Bissett. Kim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So Kim, young adult anxiety, child anxiety, what are the signs, the symptoms that we should be looking out for?
I think the critical thing is really a change in behavior. So when someone, the young adult or the child, is not behaving the way they typically do, so if they're usually not isolating and they're isolating, or they're kind of, the definition of a young adult, they like to be on their own a lot. But if they're isolating to the degree that it's kind of troubling, or it's very, there's a big difference in their behavior, that's something to definitely check in on. Or if a young adult is not very talkative, or a child, and then they become really talkative, like, oh, I'd like to talk with you. Can we chat about this? A big sign might be like, oh, can we watch a movie, when they're looking for more attention than they don't usually talk about. So we're literally watching the change in behavior and just checking in with the child or the young person to say, like, hey, how are things going? What have you been thinking about? Not really aggressively looking to the child, but or the young adult, but just kind of checking in to say, hey, is everything going okay? Are there things on your mind? Things you want to talk about? A good walk is great to kind of check in. Shooting some hoops is a great way to check in. Young adults especially tend to talk more when they're doing something. I take my kids out to the field almost every day, rain, cold, and just they always talk about things. Like, my son just told me this random thing on YouTube he just saw, and I was like, oh, okay, that's really cool. So really checking in and being present and listening is key. Listening.
Right. And I think it's easy at this time for parents to be overwhelmed, and they are not immune to stress. In fact, some people would say they attract stress. So what advice can you give to parents so that they're not passing that stress on to their kids?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, just like dogs pick up on stress, kids pick up on stress, to kind of find things that de-stress you, whether it's a yoga class online or talking to a friend, setting aside that time. Maybe exercising can be a key thing. Not getting too caught up in the news. I recommend to people, don't have the TV on the news all the time, because that can really get you really geared up. I have a friend who was like, I just couldn't stop watching, and then had difficulty sleeping. So to kind of check your own stress and say, like, maybe I need to go for a walk, and you can go for a bike ride. There's lots of yoga classes online, or any kind of classes almost are online, or a great audio book or a great book. Finding ways to de-stress yourself so that you're not bringing that to your children.
Sure. And then we know that young adults, especially using social media a lot, it can be something where it helps us feel connected, but it can also be anxiety producing. So what kind of advice would you give on social media consumption right now?
Yes, absolutely. To really limit the social media, because you can go from news feed to news feed to news feed, and it can really feel like really get you geared up. So to try and talk with, especially your young adults, about, it's great to be on a video game with a friend of yours. For example, we have a couple young kids that my son gets on the video with, and we do it every day at 3:00. So they know that they're on, and they're already, they look forward to that after they have done their schoolwork and done a couple of things. And we know that we go out right after that, after they spend a lot of time. So kind of not getting so worried, because we're in such an unusual time with COVID-19, but just to be aware of it, and then to let the young person have an outlet. Maybe use that as like, oh, after you finish that report, or after you finish that, everyone's on Google Classroom, then you can go on for an hour or two, and then let's get outside, let's do something, or help with dinner, making desserts. My kids love to make everything. So if you can balance, there's no such thing as balance in the world of COVID-19 right now. I call it integration. So we'll do one thing, then we'll mix it up and do another thing. Try not to have, the social media dominate or the video games dominate, but integrate them in. And of course, some days are going to be out of whack, and that's okay. Some days I do really well at work, and my kids don't do as much as their schoolwork. And another time, my wife will do really well with her work.
We're not limited to quarantine, right? Some days everything is out of whack.
Yes, exactly.
That's just the way it goes.
Exactly.
But thank you so much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. We appreciate you sharing your insight. I know you have a lot more information. I know your company, your website can offer some additional resources. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, great. And coming up, we have a group of creatives that are helping to stop the spread of the coronavirus. You got to stay with us.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. Well, guys, while we're all at home during this pandemic, many people have turned to arts and crafts to help pass the time.
Absolutely, Cheryl. And I can tell you as a performing artist myself, being able to collaborate with like-minded individuals during these uncertain times is a huge relief. And our next guest is, heads a benefit corporation with a social purpose. So we'd like to welcome to the show, Bo Turner. How you doing, my man?
Wonderful. Good to see everybody. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into it now. You run a pretty interesting organization, okay? And, you've been around for 7 years. And what exactly does your organization do?
Yeah, so 757 Makerspace is a creative workshop and community resource. So people can come here, they have access to tools, equipment, but more importantly, if there's a community of people that pull together to be able to make and create pretty much anything you can imagine.
Absolutely. Now, you've also started creating something called, I guess it was the mask or the face mask project, and you started doing this even before COVID-19 hit. Like, what led to that creation?
Yeah, so what we started noticing was there's other hotspots that certainly hit way earlier, and we wanted to find some way to be able to help from here, and knowing that it was going to ramp up and make its way across, and we just happened to try to provide resources where we could, and then now that it's at our door, we've been able to get in front of that, and we're just here to sort of offer a stopgap and wait for all the rest of the stuff that's going to come into place to be able to fill the regular supply chain. We're just there to help in that interim.
Awesome. And you also collaborate with so many artists, right? I was on your website and you mentioned backyard artists, like from backyard artists to citizen scientists. Like, can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, there's inventors, there's makers, there's creators, there's cooks, there's bakers, engineers, rocket scientists, and everybody in between of all ages. So there's stuff for kids, stuff for adults. And sometimes one of the best things you can have is just an interesting thought, and even young kids can have a solution to a problem that you have that maybe you've never thought of.
Awesome. Now, do you guys get lost in the moment? Because I know, like, when you're creating, like, you don't look at the time, but when you look up, you've lost like many hours in a day. Like, has that happened to you?
It's real easy to do that. For us, trying to keep a focus inside of here and keeping people on task really helps with that.
Okay. Now, being a benefit corporation with a social purpose, like, what was the drive behind that?
Yeah, so we wanted to do something that was a little bit different. The biggest thing for this was, how do we teach people to design, prototype, and manufacture? And which, as it turns out, during this COVID-19 SARS-2 crisis, this is kind of the perfect opportunity to put that into play. We've got a great community resource of people that have come together, some with existing skills already, and a lot without that. They wanted to be able to pass the time. They wanted to find a way to be able to help, and they can be engaged and involved in their community.
Okay. All right. And Bo, and what are some of the other things that you guys are creating, during the COVID-19? Because I know it's not just face masks.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, there's been a lot that we've worked on. The face mask has been probably one of the biggest. At the time of this taping, we're about 7,500 face masks that have gone out as of about an hour ago in the last 3 weeks. We've had a little over 1,000 face shields that we've put out, numerous ventilator adapters, battery packs. It turns out there's some ventilators that were offline because their batteries need to be repacked. And then numerous other fittings and just other little things that people need that can make a difference.
Great. Now, how can our viewers get more information about how to get in contact to even get more information about that?
Yeah, if they're local to our area, they can certainly go to our website, 757makerspace.com. And if you're outside of that area, look for any resource that's helping. You'll find makerspaces, other creative spaces, artist houses, collectives. And it's these groups of people that pull together typically as a community resource. And if you don't have that in your area, just talk to other creatives and other makers. You can always pull together. It's one of the best assets that we have.
That's pretty cool. Now, how can other people get involved, with a little bit of time that we have left?
Yeah, so one way is if you knew how to sew or you wanted to learn, there's simple patterns out there, and you can find those even on our website. There's videos that'll walk you through step by step. You can find there's plenty of people that need this. Even outside of just the hospital and medical community that we're focused on, there's individuals that need these masks. There's people that are older. There's meal delivery folks. There's tons of people that could use just a simple mask project. And it's also a great way to pass the time and to be helpful.
Awesome. Well, Bo, you've definitely been a great guest, and we certainly do appreciate the time that you took out to be a part of our show today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Be safe, everyone.
You do the same.
Thanks so much, Quincy. We love that interview. Coming up, we are going to be talking to a pilot to see how COVID-19 has affected the airline industry. So don't take off just yet.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. Thank you so much for watching. Well, guys, the commercial airline industry has been hit so hard by the pandemic. And right now we're going to bring in Captain Darryl Smith. He is a commercial airline pilot with a major airline. Darryl, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to see you all again, too.
So I know that things have changed significantly in the airline industry. And I mean, you were used to flying all the time. How has your job as a pilot changed?
Well, from a personal perspective, it's given me time to start growing a goatee since my flights have been canceled for the month of April. But I have to kind of pencil it in, but it's there. You just can't see it. But seriously, 2 months ago, the airlines were doing great. We had overcome the decade of doom from after September 11th, and people were rebuilding their careers. People were happy. The airlines were making money for once. 1 month ago, those of us that were in the airlines back in September 11th days looked at each other and said, here we go again. And with fears of bankruptcy and losing our jobs. But on the positive side, the CARES Act that Congress passed just a couple of weeks ago that was signed by the president, in addition to giving stimulus checks to Americans and the small business loans, it also has a stimulus package in there for the airlines to save the airline industry, because there's no doubt if that wasn't in there, a good number of airlines would have failed and would have gone into bankruptcy. So that's a good side. The other good side is after the virus is subdued enough where we can go back to our leisure and business flying, we're not worried about terrorism like we were after September 11th. Remember that? And now it's just we just need to get back up in the air, and we look forward to seeing our passengers again.
I know, and I know that you're still flying occasionally, but how much has your schedule changed?
My last 2 flights have been canceled, but I still have flights that are scheduled for the rest of the month. And they're supposed to notify us the day ahead of time if it's going to change or if it's going to be canceled totally. And then I end up staying home. So staying around the house, I'm getting a lot of honeydews done. And I'm actually enjoying it. I haven't had time. I've never had time in my military career of 26 years and my airline career. I'm always running from one thing to another. So it's a little bit of a blessing to really count your blessings. And so we're, Mel, my wife, and I, and we're pretty positive people, and we're just trying to make the best of it. We just hope it ends soon.
Yeah, I know.
Stuff,
Yeah, me too. And you definitely are a positive person. But going back to flying, I mean, what is the mood like? I know you're staying positive, but what about the other pilots, flight attendants, gate agents, everybody else working?
It's a double-edged sword. First off, you have the virus in one hand, and nobody wants to get it, of course, from passengers or transmit it to passengers, especially flying into areas that on the news you see are hotspots like New York City or New Orleans. But the other thing is our jobs. Like I was mentioning earlier, people are worried about their jobs. They don't want to lose them. They don't want to be furloughed. They don't want the company to go into bankruptcy. So it's really a double-edged sword for us. The airlines, I think, are doing a pretty good job, and I think most people would agree. The airplanes are being disinfected every night. Of course, we're wearing our masks. What limited personal protective equipment we can wear. We're wiping down everything we can on the airplanes. The airplanes are probably now cleaner than they've ever been in the history of commercial aviation. So when you go back, it's going to be, you're in pretty good hands when you show up for a flight.
So how many people are actually on the planes that you're flying right now?
Typically, the planes, like 2 months ago, were fully booked. Then the listings dropped off to about 30. And what we do is we find typically about 20 people will show up for a flight. And it's interesting to see them. Most people, They're showing up with their masks. I had 4 students that I took from Ohio back to the West Coast so they could return home to their countries. And they had the chemical, biological protective suits with the helmet and the mask. And that was really unique to see. It's unique to see the flight attendants and the other pilots with masks on, and then the flight attendants do a real good job of wearing gloves since they primarily interact with most of our passengers.
It's so interesting. And there's been some changes too, right? I know some airlines are doing no beverage service, no middle seats, that type of thing as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The passengers have been very supportive because they know it's not our fault that we're restricting or limiting service. The flight attendants are doing this so that they can limit the interaction between them and you directly. But that doesn't mean if you're on an airplane and you're one of the essential workers that's traveling, if you want a water or some kind of a beverage or something, please ask for it. They can do personal service. You're just not going to see our flight attendants in the aisles with the carts like you normally would doing it full of service.
That makes sense with social distancing. Now, what about in the airports? Because I know there are some people who are still flying. You're obviously going to and from. Are the airports active or is it pretty quiet?
It is dead quiet. It's almost spooky. There was some movie I saw years ago that had the character was walking through the airport and all the lights were on and the PA, the public service announcements that normally play were going, but there was nobody in there. And it's almost spooky. It's like being in an airport at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Oh, yes,
but
I've been there.
it's 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And it is a very, very weird feeling. Just driving to the airport on the interstate, there's very few cars on the interstate. So I can actually stay in the left lane and go much quicker than I used to, which is a good thing. But you get to the airport and the parking lots are wide open. So it's got its pluses and minuses, but things have got to change. And we can't wait for it to get better.
I know. And for your sake and everybody else flying, I mean, thank you so much for still doing your job and taking people to and from locations. And we really appreciate you joining us here today on Main Street Living.
Yeah, we sure appreciate it. And come back to the airlines as soon as you can. We look forward to it. And to all my fellow Las Vegans, go Knights, go.
Look at you. And I know you want to get back to the sporting events as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll happen soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Cheryl, and the rest of the crowd there.
All right, Darryl. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. And Darryl, I definitely want the sports to come back. I can't wait to travel again. But stick with us. When we get back, we'll have more Main Street Living.
Welcome back to Main Street Living. That was a fun show, wasn't it, guys?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of good information.
Yeah, I always love talking to different people and the commercial airline pilot. I mean, what a great perspective, right? To hear what's going on the planes and inside the airports.
Yeah, especially knowing that, you obviously can't or shouldn't fly unless you're essential personnel these days. So, yeah, I would think it's a pretty cool thing. But I did get a new nickname from my plant here. So, so
what is it? Dr. Kim.
Dr. Kim.
Oh, yes.
So y'all refer to her as Dr. Kim. Okay.
Is that creepy though, that you're calling? Is that creepy or no?
It's a sign of respect.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll say that.
It's a tree. It's not a bush. This is a respectful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do want to say, for everyone, just, don't panic and just this thing. You know what?
If you guys were watching our show, you probably saw his earpiece pop out at one point. So we're gonna come up with a nickname for you, Quincy.
Loose ear.
Now that you can hear, I can ask. Where can we watch the show if we missed it? I'm not saying I missed it. I'm not saying I missed last week. But if I did, hypothetically, where would I?
Well, if you did, or if any of our viewers missed it, you can catch any of our past shows on yourview.com.
And make sure you join us Mondays at 9 p.m. local time as we take our next walk down Main Street. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.